today to speak to this issue? Please raise your hands. Great, come on up, because if you line up, and I think we'll use this microphone here. My apologies, it's not really ergonomically correct, but if you just come on up and try and limit your comments to just a couple of minutes, please. I always ask if you have a topic sentence, if you remember that from high school, that's the best way to make sure we get your point, which is to start with your topic sentence and tell us the one thing you want to make sure committee members grab out of your testimony. Welcome.
Thank you, members, for this opportunity to speak. My name is Daniel Kraus with Californians for High Speed Rail. I'm the executive director, and our group represents the people of California that want this system badly. They voted for it in 2008, and polls show that they still strongly support this project, even on the peninsula. So we always remind everyone that this is the will of the public. We also, as an organization, support the idea of figuring out a way to make this situation on the peninsula work in terms of sharing the corridor with CalTrain and high-speed rail. And we want to work constructively with all parties to find solutions for this. However, we do have concerns about defining the project in a way, that will limit the capacity of the system and the speed, which was talked about here. And I hope not to see this get into a too technical legal argument. If we do that, we're really not honoring the will, the intent of the voters. I don't think voters want to see one train a day of full speed. They want to see a system they can expect to get on, 4 times an hour or maybe twice an hour, where they can get up down from L.A. to San Francisco in the 2 hours and 40-minute time frame that they voted on. I don't think their intent is to do it once a day. So I just want to make sure whatever arrangement is come about, that it's done in a way that honors the true intent of a system of high-speed rail that's true high-speed rail. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next witness, please.
My name is Kathy Hamilton from Menlo Park, California. I want to make a comment about the previous speaker's comment. The people of the California residents did vote for 1A, but they voted for it to be done in a responsible, fiscally responsible way. The concern I have is the discussion of phasing and this horizon. And when you're talking about horizon numbers in 2035, that means the word ridership. And the ridership has not been established to properly do an EIR, and if you had a phased implementation 20 years from now, it would be stale, and it is based on bad numbers. I just want to say that the ridership committee that CEO Van Ark has established will not have a solid proposal for nearly 2 years. That was in his presentation. It did say they'd give an update at the time of the business plan. But that cannot be an objective ridership study, because the premise is these numbers are really okay, let's tweak them. So I appreciate the efforts, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. Next witness, please.
Mr. Chairman, Ravi Mehta, appearing on behalf of the cities of Palo Alto, Atherton, Menlo Park, and Pico Rivera. Transparency is very important. No matter what we build, it has to be built through transparency. Unfortunately, it appears that the High Speed Rail Authority lacks a lot of transparency. They continue to hold meetings on the peninsula behind closed doors. They continue to have indicate to members in the community that information will be passed on to the board members. It appears that a lot of information and decisions that are being made without the information that is being given to staff and consultants at the authority. Kathy just brought up the issue of ridership. Ridership, no matter what we build, the very foundation of high-speed rail, whether it's a 2-track, 4-track, 2 stations, 10 stations, it's all got to be based on ridership. The ridership study by Cambridge Systematics, this committee through ITS has determined is fatally flawed. High Speed Rail Authority has set up its own peer review committee, which again meets in secrecy. They've signed a confidentiality agreement that they can't discuss anything that they're doing with anybody. First, I think that violates the Brown Act, but much more beyond that. if we're going to be transparent, if this is the will of the people, that information should be provided to everybody. Lastly, Prop 1A requires that before any funding is provided to the authority, that they provide a business plan and a ridership study. Yes, they've got a ridership study. They've yet to provide a business plan. But I think inherent in Prop 1A is that both of these items have to be reliable. So giving you a ridership study in itself doesn't do anything. So I would ask this committee to, again, request that a new ridership study be provided, hopefully through ITS.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Charles Volz from CCHSR. My topic sentence is, don't waste money on a very expensive EIR that will be of limited, if any, value downstream. We're now in the throes of trying to decide on a peninsula whether it's going to be 2 tracks, 3 tracks, 4 tracks, where and when, etc., all of which the answer to that question is dependent on a valid, high-grade ridership study. I don't accept the notion that you can have a less quality ridership study that, quote, is good enough for government work, because the challenges of making the right answer on the peninsula are totally dependent on that valid, reliable ridership study. I'm a practical guy. It seems crazy to me to go ahead and do a full-fledged EIR based on, to say the least, flimsy ridership study that provides the foundation for it. In addition, it's not only expensive for the state government and for federal funds that could well be wasted, it's going to cost each of the communities, the 20 or so cities on the peninsula, to come up with detailed responses to the draft EIR, which is going to require hiring consultants, etc. It's easy to estimate $1 million by local communities that don't have that money. So I beg you, don't fund an EIR that's going to be a waste.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for being here. And I believe this is our final witness on high-speed rail issues before we go to other members of the committee and then march through the other high-speed rail items.
Thank you, Chairman Simitian and committee members. My name is Richard Tolmack. I'm president of the California Rail Foundation. My topic sentence is capacity and speed and ridership are all influenced by a change in scope, and the change in scope requires examination of other alternatives which have been shunned by the authorities, such as the Altamont alternative. In many ways, this 2 hours, 40 minutes schedule does dictate action, and one of the ways it dictates action is you have to consider other ways of getting to Los Angeles that fast. And the thing is, if you have this capacity problem on the peninsula, which everybody has acknowledged, you must consider getting off that peninsula right-of-way before going the whole distance down to San Jose. And this is the thing that the authority has neglected for about 8 years now, and it needs to be re-examined now that the scope of this segment is being changed.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you for being here. I believe that completes public testimony. Anyone we left out on this item? If not, then let's bring the matter back to the committee and ask, I believe, Senator Fuller, you wanted to take us in a different direction, both literally and figuratively, if I understand it correctly. Why don't we ask you to go ahead and raise any questions or concerns you might like the authority to respond to.
Thank you. I think this is a lot easier, and I believe you're already on the way to curing this, but it is my understanding that this route has been settled, and I'm now talking more about the southern route, from the Bakersfield through Palmdale portion. My understanding is that route had been settled years ago, and now we're just before I walked in here, I was told that we're considering reopening that alignment and maybe going a different direction that would undo agreements that have been approved and maybe subjecting the state to new costs for the EIRs and potential lawsuits. And so anything that changes anything in this deal makes it way more difficult to do for all of us. So, why are we? Is it true, first of all, that you're considering a different realignment, and why is this action being considered now?
It is true, and it has not yet been decided. It's being recommended to the board next week. The documentation will be available hopefully by this weekend. And the reason for looking at, and it's only an alternative, it is not, the other alternatives are still in play. I think there was some misunderstanding that everything else is now rejected. But this is an alternative as part of the process, as part of the environmental process. And as part of the investigation, it has become clear that what we've been analyzing and investigating up to now is becoming a lot more complicated than what one originally envisaged. And therefore, when one looked at other alternatives, it is clear that the grapevine alternative is definitely a possibility, and we would be requesting our board to allow us to further investigate that alternative. I think, if I may, Senator, there are going to be some meetings with some of the interested parties this afternoon and so on, because maybe some of the excitement just needs further clarification. That's why I said documentation has not yet been distributed. Unfortunately, it's the way that these things are done. An agenda was distributed, the documentation is now being distributed, and hopefully by having some of the discussions, people will feel more comfortable with what is being recommended. And again, the other alternatives do not fall away.
And I guess that was the first thing, is this probably, when you are putting out an agenda that has an impact of this magnitude, and there's one group that knows about it, and there's another group that thought they had the route but doesn't know about it, that, maybe I could just suggest that you might want to do some, announcements that there'll be stakeholder meetings with some dates around that, because it sort of doesn't go down well for one group to think they're sitting in a back room with someone else, and so on and so forth. So I'm just not going to go there too much more, but I would just specifically request that some realignment maps and meetings with both legislators and stakeholders to get the information out as soon as possible. Because now the way this place works is that I have information, and I've lived in both areas for extensive stretches of time. So the information is that one tiny, tiny city is more difficult to do something with than the whole EIR new thing that Tejon Ranch has put in place. It's like miraculous. So I hope you're taking all those things into consideration. Yeah. And you'll explain to us why, since there's already an existing train route going to one and there's not one going the other, just we need some clarification, and soon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We will, and we did try, just by the way, we spoke to a lot of people down there in the last few weeks before the agenda came out, but obviously we didn't talk to enough. So
just sending out some, we're having hearings on it here, and here's some realignment maps that would be very helpful, and because now that people have certain information given out by other people, probably it's going to be twice as hard to work with this issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Lowenthal.
Well, I don't know, Mr. Chairman. I'm concerned about, or maybe not concerned is the word, but I certainly have some questions on the update on item number 2 of federal funds. So I don't know if I should wait till the presentation.
Why don't we hold there, and we'll finish up on these sort of more regional concerns. Anything on a regional level before we move on to the next item?
Not that it's on the agenda, except that I too wait for an updated business plan with ridership numbers and this is an ongoing discussion we've had, and I don't have anything new to add.
Thank you. And the statement that Assemblymember Gordon and I released with Congresswoman Eshoo specifically referenced the concern about the credibility of the ridership studies as the base, and the use of those studies as the basis for this larger phased project, which we don't believe.
I concur. I mean, I think this legislature has been asking for that for the, and so this is a constant theme.
Thank you to Senator Fuller, because her questions about agendas prompted me to remember a question I had forgotten. Could I ask the High Speed Rail Authority, do I understand that there is an upcoming agenda item sometime in the next month on this corridor that is an action item? I'm sorry, I'm speaking now of the San Francisco to San Jose.
The San Francisco-San Jose board meeting agenda item is to inform the board on what we would intend to do in the way of phased implementation.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead, I apologize.
So that is the item that is on the board meeting.
The concern I have is that as I look at your May 5th monthly meeting agenda, item number 5, update on the San Francisco-San Jose alternative section, under status, the letter A is there, which I believe indicates that it's an action item, and it also indicates that while, quote, staff will provide an overview of the phased implementation approach to be incorporated in the environmental document, and an update of the alignments and station alternatives under study in the San Francisco-San Jose HST section. It goes on to say the board will have an opportunity to provide direction for this section. Could you tell us what that means in terms of potential action? And we're having this conversation, and I thought it was a good first conversation, if you will, about how we might eventually get to yes. But I want to make, and I apologize for this use of terms up front, but I want to make sure the train hasn't already left the station as we continue to talk about all this. So can you give me some indication of what action is anticipated or some commitment that action won't be taken that precludes a change in course on these issues?
The recommendation by the authority to its board is that we continue for the next 18 months to do these studies, as I explained to you earlier on phased implementation, and that the draft EIR would thereby be completed in the, I think, in the summer, fall of 2012.
And if you changed your mind a month from now because we had a different take on this,
we would go back to them with another recommendation or another proposal.
So just to be very clear, and if it appears that I'm trying to put you on the spot, it's because I am, Mr. Van Ark. No action you take at the May 5th meeting will preclude a change of course, should that be the wish of your board on the San Jose to San Francisco corridor.
There's nothing that I'm aware of that's going to change any course,
right.
Mr. Chairman.
Can I have your assurance that if you become aware of something, that before you make a recommendation to your board, you'll be back to us on this? Okay. And the one other question I have is, was this meeting originally scheduled to be in Sacramento, or was it originally scheduled, the May 5th meeting, scheduled to be in another location? Ms. Porvahidi, can you help us with that?
There was some discussion earlier in the year to have it in San Jose, but then it was rescheduled to be here in Sacramento.
Okay.
And the reason for that would be?
That was a decision made due to one of the agenda items that we do have on our agenda is a small business and DVB policy. It's Small Business Enterprise Month in the state. There was some coordination we were trying to make through the governor's office potentially to coordinate some type of press release. That was one of the reasons why moving it to here to Sacramento.
Okay. Mr. Van Ark and Ms. Porvahidi and Ms. Aitchison, I think you are aware we're asking you back to our next meeting and the meeting after that, and that's in your plans, yes?
The next meeting is May 5th. Is that correct? That's our board meeting date that causes some difficulty.
We're happy to work with you to sort that out so that you can be present on May 5th, however, understanding that you have some things scheduled. So can I have your commitment that you'll be here?
We'll be in Sacramento. Most of the board items are unfortunately my items, Mr. Chairman. So I have a, we started at 9:30.
The high-speed rail items that we have on the agenda for that day are also your items, sir.
Yeah, I know. So we have to find a solution.
So just so we're clear, is that a commitment you'll be here?
I will have to consult with my board, Mr. Chairman. I have another board too. I have a board, I have a chairman there too.
I'm going to ask the question one more time. Are we going to have you here?
I will have to consult with my board, I'm sorry, but, you know.
Okay. I think you're looking for $200 million this year, is that correct?
Yes.
Then I think you have to make the case to both houses of the legislature that the $200 million is going to be responsibly spent to a good purpose. And it would be my strong encouragement to you to be here to make that case. If you're not here to make that case, then I think you have to accept responsibility for the fact that you were not here to make that case. All right, let's move on to update on federal funds. Any updates from the High-Speed Rail Authority on federal funds relative to what we've got in our agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I believe what's in the agenda and the information that's contained in the various paragraphs of the agenda is correct. The values are what we know and what we have. As it's stated here, California has not lost any of the monies due to the reductions in high-speed rail budgets in Washington, D.C. What has happened is the FY11 budget of $2.5 billion was reduced to zero in Washington, but that does not affect us. And $400 million of the Florida money was reduced. That means today there is $2 billion in Florida money still awaiting distribution by the federal government. We have been told that that would be decided, and that should be now in about 2 weeks' time, that $2 billion would still be allocated. We had applied for $1.4 billion thereof and put some options upwards. And we know that there have been many applicants for that money in Washington.
Thank you. Senator Lowenthal, any questions about prospects for federal funds?
Yeah, I just want to know how the board, what contingency plans there are and what messages there are. And I realize this may not have come yet before the board, or the board may not have addressed this, but right now we have a plan in which with the federal funds that have already been proposed, that we're going to have a line between Borden and I believe Schaffner, and that if there are the additional up to $1.4 billion, that will go from Merced possibly down to Bakersfield. That's the plan, and that seems where you're planning at this point. However, with the federal government, you're saying zeroing out in the 2011 budget, I think, any funds, and if in fact $1.4 billion is not received, but significantly less than that, if any, is received, how will that impact the ongoing commitment on the part of the, or how will the board deal with that commitment? And is there, right now we have a very, I think, aggressive, although there's no time frame, but the belief that there'll be significant amounts of federal funds coming. But does this not, potentially, I'm not saying, let's hope it doesn't happen, but potentially a message coming from Washington, it's not coming, the money, or not that, will there be contingency plans that we will see? And when would we see those plans?
Senator Lowenthal, this is not the statement of the board, and you're correct. This needs to be further debated by the board.
That's right, and I'm not asking for the statement. I'm just asking for the process. I'm from Palo Alto,
sure.
and it's the process.
We're proud to have you, sir.
Thank you, Senator.
And you know that when
I understand that what I'm asking is just yourself.
But you understand also that when we put our business case forward to you, which we've agreed with you in October, for the 14th of October, these aspects will also be contained in the business case. But quite clearly, if you build high-speed rail systems, and any high-speed rail system anywhere in the world, any high-speed rail system anywhere in the world, has required a lot of federal funding.
That's right.
And the same applies in the United States. And yes, we are subject to a big amount of federal funding. And as you know, too, at this stage, the President has got $53 billion planned over a period of 6 years. And we do not know, you and I, we do not know where that will end up. But it is clear that if you want to build a high-speed rail system, we get a little bit back to the discussion on the peninsula, but high-speed rail is about connecting people over long distances at high speed. And it's about people, long distance, and high speed.
Right.
And that is not cheap, and has not been cheap anywhere in the world. And it has not been done by the private sector anywhere in the world. It's been done by the public sector with the participation of the private sector. And if the public sector is not able or willing to put that money forward, there is not high-speed rail. And I don't think we should be hiding behind any bushes on that issue. It is just fact. It's the same thing in the United States as it is in any other country in the world. So the authority had put in their budget $18-19 billion requirements for federal funding. And if this type of money is not going to become available, it becomes problematic to build a high-speed rail. And I think it is therefore important, I've often said it, the year 2011 is an important year because a lot of those things are playing in Washington, but also here. And that will have an effect on where we go with high-speed rail.
Right. That has tremendous implications and critical about decisions about where decisions are made under a certain set of assumptions, and so things need to be readdressed. And I'm not asking you now to do that. I'm not saying that that you. This is reality, and the denial of reality gets us into much more trouble than. And I'm not saying that in any way at this moment. I'm just anticipating that decision points will come up very soon, and we would like to be part of, or at least open to communication clearly, because these are far beyond California at this moment, and flexibilities may be needed greater, and between the state and the federal government, communication there needs to be much clearer. It's nice to have wishes and wants, and we're there, but this project is much too important for all of us out here, and yourself, and the High Speed Rail Authority, not to make the most realistic kinds of decisions. And I'm not saying you have not up until now, but the reality is potentially changing, and we need to be communicating very clearly as we move forward now.
Good.
All right. We are at item number 2, update on federal funds. Do either the Legislative Analyst's Office or the Department of Finance have comments? Decided this is a conversation you don't want to wade into, huh? All right. That takes us to item number 3, which is an update on High-Speed Rail Authority staffing. We're at agenda page number 10. It's an informational item. I think we've had quite a bit of conversation previously, Mr. Van Ark, about the need for positions and to have those positions filled. And I guess the question is, how are we doing? How many positions currently vacant? What subject matter areas are still lacking staff? Let's start there, I think.
Again, the information in front of you is correct and updated. That means we have at this stage 19 people on our staff out of the 37 that we should be allowed to hire. The process has received quite a bit of momentum at this stage. Firstly, the 6 exempt positions have been approved, although obviously we're having to work with many departments to get this done, so we are at this stage working with our HR group, which is through DGS, with the Department of Finance, together with the Personnel Department and everybody to get the process through. We have the first few positions now clarified and cleared, ready, in fact, one of them for hire. I think that the momentum has now just picked up, that we're going to be able to start hiring in the very short term, start hiring some of these people.
Particular areas where there's a gap in the organization at this point?
Everywhere.
Senator Lowenthal, any questions on this item?
No.
Legislative Analyst's Office, Department of Finance. Anything else you want to share with us at this point from the authority? All right, let's move on to item number 4, please. We have a number of budget change proposals. These are on page 11, pushing towards a couple $100 million, with a couple of items being the bulk of that. Let me ask the authority, contractor work plans completed and shared with the committee when?
We believe that we should be done with those in the next 3 weeks approximately.
Okay, and those will be shared with the committee?
Yes, we'll be able to share them, no problem.
And focusing for a moment on the status of the fiscal consultant's contract.
We received 6 bids on a new RFP that went out. We are having orals with the 3 remaining contestants on Tuesday, Wednesday, next week, in fact. And hopefully by the end of next week, we'll be able to move ahead with them.
And Mr. Van Ark, I think you referenced the fact an updated financial plan is to be delivered to the legislature pursuant to current law now by October 14th.
Correct.
And that will happen.
Correct.
Thank you. Senator Lowenthal, anything on this item? Legislative Analyst's Office, Department of Finance. All right. Then I think that takes us to the very end of your items for the day.
So we're going to hold this
We're going to hold this out. Yes, the recommendation is to hold open. Thank you for clarifying. No, that's helpful. We're going to hold these items open pending additional detail. And Mr. Van Ark, speaking of that additional detail and your schedule for when we're meeting next week, I understand you're going to get back to us on that.
Yeah.
Our staff will be happy to work with your staff and your board if it would be helpful to set up a time certain so that you could count on being here at a particular time and spending a quality hour or so with us. And then your board would know that perhaps during that break time they could do other business. But we want to make it as easy as possible for you to be here to make your case.
And as you can tell, we work through lunch.
So it's good.
So do we.
So good. There you go.
All 19.
Maybe somebody will.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. That brings us to CTC. Senator Lowenthal, how would you feel about a 5-minute break?
Fine.
All right, folks, we're going to take a 5-minute break.
What time do you think we'll be finished for playing? I'd guess another hour. One more hour, Joe? In terms of needing me to be at 1 more hour?
I think so.
Okay. I think it was very important.